Dear Taz, recently I watched Star Trek VI The Undiscovered Country and noticed that apparently the Klingon Homeworld was evacuated and relocated. But Star Trek The Next Generation doesn't really seem to support that idea. Can you explain this? Coriana of Borg 547. Great question, Coriana, and I absolutely can try. So let's warp over to the Klingon Homeworld and get you some answers. Hello and welcome to another episode of Does That Make Sense? A Star Trek themed web series that discusses various odd or inconsistent Trek topics and questions brought up over the years by you, this channel's audience. In today's video, we're taking a look at Qo'nos, the Klingon Homeworld, the events of Star Trek VI The Undiscovered Country, and how to reconcile that movie with the TNG era of Star Trek. And of course, and as always, I'll be playing devil's little advocate about this topic in order to foster amazing discussions in the comment section below. So without further ado, let's dive in and ask the simple question, does that make sense? Two of the biggest questions I always seem to get on this channel are in regards to the Klingon homeworld of Qo'nos. You see, in Star Trek VI The Undiscovered Country, the Klingon moon Praxis is destroyed by a large explosion caused by overmining and insufficient safety precautions. Its destruction would also spell the end of the Klingon homeworld itself, as Qo'nos' atmosphere would be contaminated, depleting the oxygen of the planet within 50 Earth years. And herein lies the problem. Chronologically speaking, Star Trek VI The Undiscovered Country was conceived and written after TNG had already explored the Klingon culture in the 24th century, and would go on doing so throughout the rest of its 7-year run. And yet, there was no mention of this highly important event, while at the same time depicting Klingon cities as being old or ancient, an impossibility according to Star Trek VI. Near the end of that movie, the Federation president is laying out plans for the complete evacuation of Qo'nos.
The proposed agenda is as follows. The total evacuation of Qo'nos has been calculated within the 50 Earth-year time span.
Meaning that at most, a city on New Qo'nos could only really be about 60 years old. Hardly ancient, even if my own bones would disagree. But let's leave this problem for a moment and come back to it later. Beyond that problem, there's another issue I often get asked about, specifically why the Klingon Empire couldn't handle this problem themselves. They have a whole fleet at their disposal, Taz, so why would they need the Federation at all? That just doesn't make any sense. But on that issue, I really have to disagree. You see, the math supports the idea that the Klingon Empire can't handle this emergency on their own. As established in canon, Klingon starships are pretty packed, with no real luxuries at all. That being said, however, let's dive into the math of the problem. Let's assume the Klingon Empire could scrape together enough resources to build 100 specially designed starships to engage in planetary evacuation. Let's also assume that these vessels could hold 10,000 civilians aboard them at any given time, similar to the later developed Galaxy class. So each trip of the 100 vessels could hold a maximum of 1 million honorable warriors. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? The next problem is, where are we taking them? In this case, distance from Qo'nos. Let's generously assume the next door star system is capable of housing everyone from Qo'nos, and that it's only 5 light years away. Again, given a generous ability of Klingon starships to reach warp factor 9 for all their travels, again, all old warp scale of course, that would mean that the trip to their new homeworld would take about 2.5 days. Factor in offloading the civilians and you're probably looking at about a 6-day round-trip time. Now, let's assume the Klingon homeworld has about 8 billion people to evacuate. It's probably more than that, but let's assume only 8 billion. At 60 trips per year of 1 million people per trip, to evacuate 8 billion loyal Klingons would take about 133 years to accomplish that goal, and that's assuming every ship is used, with no pauses for repairs or unforeseen circumstances. And even if you could get that number down by half, with the Empire utilizing every ship it had in its fleet, that's still almost 67 years to evacuate Qo'nos, a full 17 years after the planet had already died. But of course, that's not the only problem. What about supplies and infrastructure for the new homeworld? Where do those resources come from? Who's moving those things to the new Qo'nos? So when you factor all that in, the evacuation of Qo'nos is truly a major undertaking, with a galactic power such as the Federation being the only cosmic government to have the ability to actually pull it off, even when we're very generous with the math. And of course, it's more likely that the new homeworld would be at least 20 to 30 light years away, which, if you do that math, makes the evacuation of Qo'nos even crazier. So yes, the fact of the Klingon Empire not being able to do this mission on their own actually does make sense, and also would confirm why the Romulan Star Empire also had to turn to the Federation during their time of need. But now let's go back to the first problem. Was Qo'nos actually evacuated? My guess would be no. I think it's more likely that preparations for the evacuation did in fact commence, and even some Klingon warriors were moved to other locations. But I'd bet my last tribble that Federation science would end up coming up with a solution that would negate and solve the problem. Some sort of decontamination of the Qo'nos atmosphere, which would in turn allow the Klingons to keep their homeworld. Not only does that sound very Star Trek, it would also fit in with canon, making those ancient cities actually ancient thanks to them being the original cities. But it would also contribute to what would eventually be established as a lasting peace between these two once warring enemies. After all, what's more honorable than saving your enemy's homeworld from self-annihilation?
What's happened? What's the meaning of all of this?
It's about the future, Madam Chancellor.
You've restored my father's faith.
And you've restored my son's.
But what do you think? Do you think that Qo'nos was completely dismantled and re-established on a new world? Or, like me, do you think the Federation would come up with a sciencey way to save the Klingon homeworld? Or maybe you have your own solution to the problem. Well, leave your thoughts and ideas in the comment section below. I'm looking forward to reading what you have to say. And don't forget, if you'd like to help the channel continue to answer these random questions by fandom, then please consider becoming a channel member subscriber or a channel patron. Both a major help that allows this channel to purchase resources and 3D models to keep it going. The link to both memberships is in the description below. Thanks again for watching. Qapla'!